Hi, I'm Debra Stengel, founder of Sedona Soul Adventures, on my podcast, Soul Sync, the alchemy of life and love, where I give you the secrets, the alchemy, the magic of how you can have the life and relationship of your dreams. Coming to you again from incredibly beautiful Sedona, Arizona, and I'm so happy you're here with me again. I've spent over 40 years working with couples. First, 20 years as a divorce attorney, and now more than 20 years with Sedona Soul Adventures, where we work with individuals and couples, and many of the couples we work with are on the verge of divorce. So, I've been working with couples since 1979, and I can tell you that one of the most destructive things that can happen to a relationship is infidelity. Now, I'm pretty sure that sounds pretty obvious, but I think in our world today, I don't hear very many people saying what I'm going to say to you today, which is stop. Don't have that affair. Just don't do it. And I think part of the problem is that I don't hear anyone out there saying, don't do it. You have no idea how destructive this is going to be because our society today just seems to be very much, oh, everybody gets to do whatever they want to do as long as they're not hurting anyone else. But wait a minute. If you're thinking that way, I don't think you realize how much hurt you're about to cause. And I just want to be clear, I'm talking now to people who are in committed relationships, whether it's a marriage or not. And if you're polyamorous, this podcast isn't for you because I'm just talking now to people who are in a committed relationship where part of your agreement and understanding with each other is that you are going to be faithful to each other. And maybe part of the problem is you haven't actually said that out loud to each other. I've been amazed to find out over the years people who have actually said, I never agreed to that, even people who were married. So you might want to start off with your partner by making sure you're both on the same page about exactly what your agreements are and exactly what your expectations are. Don't assume and don't take that for granted. Now, when I was a divorce attorney, infidelity was an all too common theme. And now with Sedona Soul Adventures, it's something that we see over and over again. And if this is something that's happening in your life, I want to ask you to stop and really think about what you're doing. Many of you are probably too young to remember the movie Fatal Attraction because it came out in 1987. But if you haven't watched it and you're toying with the idea of having an affair, please watch that movie. It has Michael Douglas and Glenn Close, and this was actually the number 2 box office hit of the entire year of 1987 because it's such a great movie. So Michael Douglas meets Glenn Close at a business meeting. And the crazy thing is, he's happily married. He has a beautiful wife that he adores, and they have an adorable little girl. But this one weekend, his wife and daughter are out of town visiting her parents, and he meets Glenn Close at this business meeting that was suddenly called on a Saturday morning, and they connect. And Glenn Close acts like she's all into just having a fling or a flingette, as my sister used to call it. And so they spend the weekend together. And you can just watch Michael Douglas thinking things like, oh, she's here. Why not? What could possibly go wrong? And oh my goddess, Glenn Close turns into every man's nightmare of all the incredible things that can go wrong. And I've actually heard Glenn Close being interviewed, and she has said that over the years, so many women came up to her thanking her for making that movie and saying to her, I know you scared the shit out of my husband. And so many men who came up to her over the years who said to her, You scared the shit out of me, and it stopped me from having an affair. So I'm feeling like maybe we need to make another cautionary tale like that to come along, because one of the really crazy things that we see in our couples retreats is that when there's been an affair, very often the person who had the affair is saying to us, "What? What's the big deal? Everybody does it." And they don't understand why their wife or husband is so completely devastated. And, I found some really interesting statistics. American Psychological Association research found that 40 to 45% of all divorces are caused by an affair, or at least triggered by an affair, because usually there were underlying issues going on already. 40% of adults who have ever cheated during a marriage are separated or divorced, while only 17% of people who had not cheated are separated or divorced. So if you don't cheat, your chances are way better for staying together. And about 50% of partners who did have affairs are still married, compared to 75% of partners who never cheated. Also, and this is interesting, men are less likely than women to divorce when there is an affair. 61% of men who cheated are still married, while 34% are separated or divorced. But only 44% of women who have cheated are still married, and 47% are divorced. So those numbers are really high. And I get it. You work with someone or you meet with someone, it's so easy to fall into it. But this is where you have to start asking yourself some difficult questions, like, what are you willing to lose? You really need to know that once an affair happens and your partner finds out about it, nothing will ever be the same again. You can deal with it. You can do things. It's possible to work through things, but understand things will never be back to where they were before. Once that trust is broken, it can't be repaired back to its original strength. And are you willing to risk your entire life for this? Because that's what happens. You're risking your marriage, your children, and your peace of mind. And then on another level, you're even risking your financial well-being, because divorce and its aftermath are very, very expensive. Most women never fully recover financially from a divorce, and it definitely affects the bottom line of most men. But the biggest thing you're risking here is the trust that you have with your partner. Think about the words we use for this. Infidelity, which means a lack of faith or breaking the faith with another person. Unfaithful, meaning I have no faith in you. Or cheating. If someone has cheated you, that's hard to get over. And once that trust is broken, it's really difficult to put it back together. You can do it, but it's really hard. We had a couple here a while ago who were here as a result of the wife having had an affair 10 years ago. 10 years ago. They had done years of therapy, but they just could never get past this. And she hadn't been unfaithful again for 10 years, but that wasn't enough. Once that trust is broken, it's just so difficult. When they came to us, we were their last ditch attempt at saving the marriage. In fact, he had already moved out and filed divorce papers. What we discovered really surprised us and really surprised them. We figured out that the problem here was about control. Now, I'll call them Linda and Mike, but that's not their real names. Linda grew up in a family where her father was in the military, so he was very rigid and controlling. She was looking for a way to get out from under all that control. she found Mike. And when they were both 19, she got pregnant and they both felt like they had to get married. So, not surprisingly, it turned out that Mike was even more controlling than her father because that's what we do. Remember the podcast I did about patterns? We very often marry our parents. And Mike admitted that not only was he controlling, but he was also very, very critical of her. So, 10 years into the marriage, after all the controlling and the criticism, she had an affair. They could both see that this wasn't the result of her not loving Mike. It had to do with her trying to finally break free from all the control and all the criticism she had had her entire life. She didn't even realize that consciously. It wasn't until we really started probing that she saw that. And when Mike got that, when he understood that, it just shifted everything. He was able to finally forgive her. And even more importantly, she was finally able to forgive herself. After their final session, they decided they wanted to do a recommitment ceremony. And we did that with them out on Oak Creek. It was so beautiful. And we all talked about how incredible it was that just the week before Mike had filed for divorce. So their marriage was saved. But look at all the years of pain and suffering that they both endured 10 years. So if you're thinking about having an affair, stop. As the Supremes would say, stop in the name of love. Don't do it. Don't do it to your family. Don't do it to yourself. And I think it's also really important for me to say here, I'm not only talking here about actual technical cheating, I'm also talking about emotional affairs where you are technically not having sex, but you've formed an emotional attachment with another person who is not your partner. And in my opinion, emotional affairs can be even more damaging than a sexual affair because you are actually forming that emotional attachment with this other person. So, if you find yourself thinking about someone else all the time and you're contacting them a lot and you're sharing with them a lot, and especially if you're sharing inappropriate stuff, or you're thinking things like, oh, she really gets me, unlike that bag of a wife I have who's always criticizing me, you could be on the road to Splitsville, my friend. These can be even more devastating for destroying trust when your wife or husband reads text messages you've written about them to someone else. Ouch. And all the rationalization in the world, oh, nothing happened. We didn't sleep together. That's all bunk because something did happen. You have not been faithful to your partner. So, if this has happened to you, then what? The issue then becomes, do you want to stay together or do you want to end the relationship? Both of those choices have huge difficulties and major consequences. For some people, they find they simply can't stay in a situation where they can feel that they could never trust the other person again. And for others, the thought of ending everything is just too overwhelming. The marriage is over, the family is torn apart, the emotional and financial consequences are just so devastating. It's almost too much to even think about. So, in light of all this potential devastation, many people try to do everything that they can to put the marriage back together again and come back into a place of trust and connection. And that's so wonderful about the work we do here. When you can talk about it, when you can let everything out into the open, you can heal. It's difficult, it's hard, but the healing can happen. We've seen it over and over again. There's the healing that has to happen for each person individually. And then there's the coming together and the rebuilding of trust and learning how to communicate with each other on a heart level again or maybe even for the first time. It is miraculous when two people can come back into a place of love and trust with each other after so much heartache and pain. So, if this issue has been haunting you, I first want to say, I am so sorry. I am so sorry for your pain and your hurt and your anguish. But I also want to tell you that there's hope. I know it. I've seen it. I've seen the healing take place and people come out the other end. We're all human. We all make mistakes. And sometimes the mistakes are more vicious and horrendous than we think we can bear. But you can bear it. You can make it through it. If your partner is cheated, you're at a crossroads. You need to decide what you are going to do. I urge you, get help with this. This is one of the most critical times in your life. And the decisions that you make now will be affecting you and your family for the rest of your life. What do you truly want? What do you need? Now is the time to really be looking for your own healing as well as the healing of the relationship. That's why each of our retreats is custom designed for exactly what you need and for what is going on in your relationship. Because what's going on in your relationship is different than what's going on in someone else's. Plus, you'll be doing your sessions in private, not in front of a bunch of strangers. That is so key. Many people just don't want to talk about their deepest, darkest secrets in front of other people. There's also a strange dynamic that can sometimes happen in a group setting where the group seems to take the side of one person, identifying one as the good guy and the other as the bad guy, and the other person can feel really ganged up on. That doesn't help the healing. The privacy of the sessions and the skills of our master practitioners, many of whom they've been working with couples for over 20 years. It truly creates a space where both of you can feel safe. If this has been haunting you, call us. Let us help. I hope this was valuable for you. And if it was, please take the time to subscribe to our channel, like it, and leave a comment. That really helps me know what you want to hear. And please, if you know someone where this is an issue or about to become an issue, please share this with them. You can have the life and the relationship you want. I know it.